Lee Zeldin of New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Mull, you referenced earlier historic verification and monitoring regime. Have you yet read the verification regime outlined in the side deals between the IAEA and Iran?
I'm not aware of any side deals between. Which side deal do you mean?
I'm referencing the deals between the IAEA and Iran to decide how the JCPOA is going to be implemented. What governs the verification of the Iran nuclear deal?
No, Iran and the IAEA have a confidential safeguards agreement that just like every member of the IAEA
We're talking
has
about
those.
the same exact thing. Have you read that?
No, sir, I have not.
Okay. I would just offer up for you, for Secretary Kerry, who was here a few months ago, it's difficult to vouch for a historic verification and monitoring regime when you don't know what the historic verification and monitoring regime is. All you know is what's contained in the JCPOA, but you don't know what's included in the agreement between the IAEA and Iran, especially as we read Associated Press reports about how Iran might be collecting some of their own soil samples, responsible for collecting some of, inspecting some of their nuclear sites. As we read what the Associated Press reports as far as the verification of the JCPOA, if you haven't yet read it, it's impossible to say that's a historic verification and monitoring regime because you don't know what it is. The administration has said this deal is not built on trust, it's built on verification. Why didn't the Obama administration ask the Iranians to sign the JCPOA?
Why did we ask them to sign it?
Why didn't we ask them to sign it?
Well, the JCPOA is a political agreement, and that it emerged, it evolved that way in the course of negotiations, that in order to preserve our ability to exact the kind of penalties and the kind of nimble ability and agility that we would have to exact penalties if the agreement were not implemented correctly, we believed it served our interest best to have this as a political agreement.
I would assume that if you have you've bought cars in your life, you've bought houses in your life, you have signed many agreements, you have signed your name on all sorts of things. I would imagine if there was an example we need to come up with of something where you should get a signature, that the JCPOA is a great example of something where you ask the Iranians, would you mind signing it? The administration decided not to.
Yeah.
Now, what is a political commitment? Can you the Secretary Kerry has referred to the JCPOA not as a treaty, and the reason is, he said, because he wouldn't have been able to get it passed. That's what he said right here. The reason why this isn't a treaty is because he wouldn't have been able to get it passed. Ridiculous answer, but moving on. He says it's not an executive agreement. It's a political commitment. What's a political commitment as defined by the Obama administration?
A political commitment is one that is the official policy of the United States government, that we are fully committed as a government to implementing the deal on its terms. As a political commitment, we or any future government is free to withdraw from that agreement with a minimum of legal difficulty. We've decided that.
I'm sorry, you said you're allowed to withdraw from the political commitment without legal difficulty?
That's right, yes.
Okay, that's what we're defining the JCPOA as something that you can withdraw from without legal difficulty?
Well, if other parties, namely Iran, decides to withdraw from it, there are going to be very serious consequences for that. We have preserved, by establishing this as a political agreement, our freedom of action in ensuring there are dramatic consequences for withdrawal from that agreement.
Okay. So should the Iran Sanctions Act be extended as is?
I know it's in place until December of this year. We're ready to work with the Congress in addressing that question in the run-up to December.
What is the administration's position on the Iran Sanctions Act? Should it be extended as is?
Our position is that we're willing to talk with the Congress, congressional leadership about that.
Okay. When do you plan on coming up with a position on the Iran Sanctions Act?
Again, we are open to work with the Congress on this. We're at your disposal.
Well, I have a position. The Iran Sanctions Act should be extended as is. What say you?
Well, let's sit down and talk about what that means. And during further...
What does that mean? It means the Iran Sanctions Act, as is, should be extended, as is.
But in previous efforts to extend the act, there have been efforts, suggestions to change the implementation of it, change the authorization.
Extending as is.
But there are voices in Congress who would like to amend it. So we need to have a conversation about it.
Okay. Well, the Obama administration needs to. I know that this whole thing about legacy and turning over to the next administration that Iran never acquired a nuclear weapon, but many of you all need to pray to God that the next administration cleans up your mess. I yield back.